Are you unable to concentrate on the tasks at hand? Do you need help focusing more or leveling up your game? Here's a tip. Try Cognizin Citicoline, clinically studied to support mental energy, focus, memory, and attention. Cognizin supports brain health and supplies the brain with the energy it needs to stay sharp. Cognizin is a leading nootropic, featured in over 200 products. This podcast is powered by Cognizin. Visit cognizin.com to learn more and find a product to help you fuel your day.
Ready to achieve great heights? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Power Your Performance, the podcast where we dive deep with leaders in the gaming world and beyond and learn the techniques they use to power their lives. I am your host, Gary Kleinman.
Power Your Performance, powered by Cognizin, welcomes Christopher LaPorte. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
It is a pleasure to have you from the confines of Las Vegas.
Sunny Las Vegas, a balmy 78 degrees today.
Well, it's better than the floods you had a couple weeks back with the water in the casinos. And
yeah,
my guess is people still sat on the chairs and gambled with wet feet.
Just press those buttons.
That's great. Are you a native
I moved to Las Vegas. I moved to Las Vegas in 2005 from Brooklyn, New York.
A New Yorker. That's a big cultural shock, New York to, or Brooklyn for sure, to Vegas.
Took some time.
It did. And when you got to Vegas, I mean, obviously you've been in gaming and, land-based entertainment and things of that nature. Were you always a gamer growing up? Was gaming a passion?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I actually, it's funny. I was asked to do a short story during the pandemic about how to cope through the pandemic. And I listed my times being this, 7-year-old kid going to the laundromat excitedly with his mother because you can get to play Double Dragon and Rampage in the not even the arcade, just the laundromat itself. So yes, definitely born and raised in the arcade, landscape.
That's great. And when did you start Reset?
So Reset actually started back in 2016. That was after I had my foray into the barcade industry with Insert Coins in 2011.
And your entry from the barcade, give me some context for that.
Sure. So in 2005, I moved out here. I was doing medical device sales, working with GE Healthcare at the time. And I was playing, Street Fighter in the local arcades in New York, right? So the Chinatown Fair, for instance, was something that I was able to be a part of at some point. But coming out to Vegas in 2005 was the first Evo tournament in Las Vegas. And so I got to see, this unbelievable competition that was, maybe 200 people in Green Valley Ranch Casino. And that just, sparked a desire to open up a venue that caters to what I saw as more people like me.
And more people like you just coming in casually, almost like a mini land center with food and beverage?
Yeah, look, when we were ideating Insert Coins, it was like I was going to sports bars in Las Vegas all the time where video poker machines are everywhere, right? Right. And I was like, why do I want to watch this when I'd rather play Street Fighter? So let's build a place where I can do that. And it really was more of a, I wanted to create something to attract non-endemic audiences to it and show people that, hey, this world that I'm in is kind of fucking cool. Right. Come on through. And it worked. So, yeah.
Have you seen the change in the non-endemic audience in terms of gaming?
I mean, yes and no. There was a time where everyone in the casino looked at us funny because we were carrying arcade sticks, at Mandalay Bay or Caesar's Palace, or anywhere that Evo tournament has, kind of called home over the past few years. But it's clearly much more understood, which is exciting. And there are a lot of new barcades that I think are doing stellar work, like, OS NYC, Valhalla, the Esports Lounge, I believe that's in Texas. And so, there are people out there still going after that market. And I'm glad to see that attention is still there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that there are quite a few, actually later today, looking at a virtual reality esports facility that's opening outside of Dallas, 100,000 square feet. The interesting thing from their perspective is the game that everyone's going to play is their game, so they own the IP, and it's a great game, and it makes sense, and they'll have a bar and food and everything else, but it is certainly immersive entertainment built around a video game. How long did you own your barcade?
Almost 5 years.
And it just reached the end of the lease, and you said, no more?
No, I mean, I'll be honest with you. This is when esports really started kind of percolate in the minds of a lot of people in Las Vegas. And I really put a lot of energy into that esports market back in, let's say, 2013. And that's when my numbers started to go down. We were doing $4.5 million a year gross revenue, and where we were catering to everyone, like, hey, come play video games and hang out and listen to the DJ play music. And it really worked. But I just wanted to kind of champion this esports scene, and the numbers just kept going down, and kind of was an eye opener. It's just how niche the esports industry really was from a North American standard. And in Las Vegas, when you're new, you're the hot girlfriend, and then after 4 or 5 years, you're just a girlfriend. And so we didn't really. I made my fair share of mistakes to not properly evolutionize my venue, as Vegas always looks for something new and tasty. But, at the end of the day, it was a great learning experience, and I still think that we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, no question. So just before we started recording, we were talking about the whole gambling side and the consulting. So talk to me about esports and gambling. I know that there are lots of platforms. There seems to be a lot of capital going into the gambling. They say it is a perfect activity for gambling, because there are a lot of prop bets, and you can do kills and everything else. What's your take, your opinion on the current state of esports and gambling, and where do you think the future is in that?
So I think the cart is way before the horse at the moment, and working with a lot of, key people here in Las Vegas, trying to get the first esports bets. And then during the pandemic, offering esports bets, and just seeing very little action and not enough to make the casino guys in the big buildings get excited, and rightfully so. Let's talk about, it's got to be a win-win. Again, we can sit here and sell all the big stories about, you can bet on this kill or this, that, and the third. We're still talking about, can we bet on how fast the next pitch is going to be in baseball? Right. That hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So, as I see it, there's something about the opportunity, and I'm glad you brought up the VR, concept earlier. We have to cast the wider net. And this has always kind of been my philosophy. Like, how do you open up this audience to the largest possible room? And let's just start with, when I look at something like Rivalry, for instance, we're talking about different esports betting platforms. One of the things that they have is almost like a digital version of horse racing that's more like marbles on Steam, where you're just betting on what's going to be the first to win. Let's attract gamers to just bet on fun video gamey things before we start to pigeonhole ourselves into let's do League of Legends. Because for what it's worth, look at North American League of Legends, viewership over the past few years. It's not going up, if it's going down. So, to sit here and, and I've seen some numbers that just, I always want to speak quite transparently about things, but we're not a $133 billion opportunity, but that's numbers that's flying around right now in terms of esports betting. It's guys, slow down. Yes. We're not there yet. One day, maybe, but that's 20 years away. So, as I see it, as we see more of a cultural impact on esports, then there's an opportunity for betting on esports. And I
think it's interesting, and better than I believe the first esports bet was at the downtown Grand Hotel in the William Hill, and somebody placed a bet, and I think that was one of the last bets as well, and media jumped all over and said, okay, there's betting. It was a single bet. My guess was done internally for the PR, being the skeptic that I can be sometimes, and then it all went away, and it just seems the worst thing that the industry can do is support the hype without the substance, and from the big, like I said, there's so much capital is going into betting, because betting has been, from a fantasy basis in stick and ball sports, just a boom. From I'm old enough to remember rotisserie baseball, let alone fantasy baseball, and the dollars have been enormous. And I think one of the challenges, and I'd love to get your opinion on, what seems to be happening and continually happening is powers that be look at gaming and say, we're going to just follow the road of stick and ball sports. And if that's what they did, we're going to do that, and we're going to be successful because so many people game. And I think there's a complete disconnect with following that model.
No, look, I'm really glad you brought this up, and this has been a great conversation thus far. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure.
The idea of, let's just get right to it, right? Overwatch League and Call of Duty League. Like, let's make these teams that are in different cities and this, that, and the third. And, some VC report is out there saying this is going to be as big as the WWE. And look, I'm glad VCs threw money into the space because it gave us a couple extra steps to get more, seen seriously. I've never been very good at getting investment capital because I don't tell that story. I'm just like, yeah, we got to build it up little by little by little. But that said, I do think that we're seeing the folly of replicating traditional sports. And at the end of the day, the thing that always worked was skin gaming, right? That's where the numbers came from, was skin gambling. And, that's why you see NFTs now, and you see all these other ways of, trying to tackle this market. But it's not in any way, shape, or form going to be by way of finding your favorite player on your local hometown team, because we just don't even have that with high school and college right now. I keep looking from a North American standpoint. Maybe these numbers are out there in Brazil. Maybe these numbers are out there in Asia. But, I don't like to be anecdotal too much, but I have a 12-year-old son, and guess what? I'm one of the biggest video gamers in Las Vegas, and he knows it. Because of how much work I've done in this space. And he's like, Dad, I like to play football. And my neighbors, right? I live in a lovely neighborhood with lots of families, and all these kids are not exactly talking about, CSGO or Valorant all the time. So we have to continue to develop the culture and community around this and build this up. And then one day, yes, these leagues will be something. But for right now, what I've always said from day one is this has to be a traveling circus. These have to be events. These have to be entertainment driven before we start getting to the skill side of things. I just went to the Las Vegas Aces basketball game a couple nights ago with my family. And while, the game itself was great and I was really, excited, and me and all the kids had a lot of fun, they were really into all the entertainment that happened between, the basketball game itself, and it's those things that we still haven't quite figured out as to how to package esports into this whole package that can entertain everyone and really hit that number we're trying to hit. So that was a lot to say. It's all salient. And listen, I had developed a digital media platform called Wham for esports. I was kind of the MTV of gaming, so to speak. Sure. And it was really difficult. One, production is incredibly expensive. The tail for revenue and audience is astronomical. And if you look at most of the media properties in the space, they have not been successful. The single largest one is Venn. How'd that go? That $50 million and out of business in 14 months. Right. And now G4 TV just a couple days ago, if not yesterday.
Yeah, what happened with Esports TV?
No, G4 TV.
Oh, G4 TV, yeah.
Yeah, that was supposed to be, this is going to be the guys who do it better than Venn. And yesterday, I think it was like 20 to 30, at the time of this recording, 20 to 30 people were laid off. So, the idea of chasing this gamer market through traditional means is
it's just not there. And it's an interesting comment because as somebody in the space, and we're in it from a health and wellness perspective, more so than the gaming per se. I don't know why everybody thinks gaming has to be monetized. Why can't it just be the game and the people gaming and its community? And when you have that community and the community is growing and it's stable, that maybe you look at ways to attempt to monetize it. We're putting money before the product.
Yeah.
It just baffles me in many ways where people talk about these cumulative numbers of esports. And I was kind of thinking of it last night in advance of this conversation, a couple others, is that esports reminds me of the auto industry in many respects, right? That there are hundreds of millions of cars on the road, but would you want a GMC Terrain dealership? that only sold GMC terrains, right? You look at the entire industry, yeah, there are a lot of cars, but if you look at individual cars, or you look at Buick or even Oldsmobile, it works cumulatively, but it's so siloed in its minutia, and there's not crossover. Like you bring up your 12-year-old, who, if he were to play whatever game is his game of choice, he's probably not playing at any given time 3 different games. Right. And he doesn't care about the other games that he's not playing. And I think that's a challenge with esports. We talk about it as this single category, like we say baseball, football, esports. But sure, baseball is played the same way wherever it is, anywhere in the world, and you know what you're going to get. Esports is, better than I, thousands of titles. And
yeah, that keeps adding because we have to put something there to make the numbers look good. And I always like to make the joke about chess suddenly becoming an esport about a year and a half ago. I was like, okay, so
I love that too.
When's poker going to be an esport because it's played online? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it everything is capable of that, and I find that interesting. So do you see the gambling aspect of it kind of waning and slowing down, or is it still, deep-pocketed people chasing this elusive goal?
The idea that how do you make $1 million in esports, be a billionaire? I do have both in my heart of hearts and my mind, right, is that this is real. It's just that the delivery has been at a fault. Because to your point, I think the narrative has always been, and I'm guilty of it as well. When I first jumped in the hype train about Riot Games, like, oh, this esports thing, like this is going to be massive, because I saw it in Street Fighter and I was in my bubble, and it only got out after I got, knocked unconscious of reality when the business failed. So that's sometimes what you have to do. But in terms of the betting opportunity, I definitely think it's there, because I laugh at this example all the time, and it really bothers my esports friends, but too bad. One of the biggest games that's exciting in the casino floor today is literally a crane machine that we grew up playing in, like Dave and Buster's. The claw machine. Yeah. There's literally a gambling machine just like that right now, and the kids are eating it up. And I'm like, there it is. I mentioned earlier, I grew up in the arcade. I'm 45 years old. I'm retiring way before these esports kids are. Make something for me and my generation. Yeah. There it is, the claw machine. Yeah. And then there's the derby machine, which is the horse racing thing. It's like it looks like a video game, it feels like a video game, and you can gamble on it, because not everyone today is really into the craps and the roulette and those games that I personally love. It's one of the reasons why I came to Las Vegas, right? I just love the allure of the casino market. But that's not what necessarily gravitates to today's audiences. So they are growing up on loot boxes, right? They are growing up on, these different ways of, look, you can, as of 2 years ago, you saw Twitch, you can watch NFL football on Twitch, right, and they're literally asking you what's going to happen at the next play. Clearly this is some kind of research that's being done, and one day we're going to be betting, via these platforms. So to tailor video games first before we get into esports, I think is the way to go, because you're going to hit that market. It's easier to normalize, and it's just what you have to do. Start with the larger market, earn money off that, and then work your way out. If you just want to go after that small niche, you're just going to set money on fire until it's finally large enough.
Well, I think there is a lot, and probably media is as much not to blame but responsible. Esports is just a small percentage of gaming, right? Gaming is, as I referenced earlier, just a bunch of people wanting to play with their friends. Mm-hmm. And the hours that they're spending in front of Twitch is to be better so they can beat their friends. It's not necessarily. And I think the other thing that's changing, and it really supports your point, is if you look at FaZe Clan and going public and the SPAC and the whole thing, whether it's successful or not, time will tell. But they look at themselves as an entertainment company, not an esports company. And you start seeing Liquid and Immortals and all the other 100 Thieves, even though a lot of them are having the layoffs because the business model of that team is not a healthy business model, that they all look at themselves as entertainment. And
right.
and even the talent agencies, where I speak to several of them. I actually am hosting a panel for the Pepperdine University Entertainment Symposium next week, and one of the panels is about data and esports, and the agents that I have on have all shifted 100% of them to creators, not esports athletes, but creators that might create content in esports, but they're creating content on the pardon the pun, on the halo of gaming, and that's where they say because they couldn't monetize the esports side.
So let me throw some ideas at you, and this is where the Reset Las Vegas kind of concept developed, and why we're so excited about the future of gaming as a whole. You know, when I look back in the early 2000s, I always like to tip my hat to the Palms Casino and the Maloof brothers for how they attracted a young audience to Las Vegas. And that was by way of MTV Real World. They talked right to that audience directly and said, hey, look at everything in Las Vegas. And it worked. That's what Twitch and YouTube can be for Las Vegas. And we're just not necessarily there yet, where we're really marketing directly through these, channels and talking to this audience that really does have, significant reach. But to your point, it's the entertainers on Twitch and YouTube, not the esports athletes. I think there's way more impact when Valkyrie or Pokimane say something on their channels than if, give me a name of an esports person. It doesn't resonate.
It doesn't register, correct.
Right. And so to start there, I think is, and this is to your point about the FaZe Clan, like, why are they saying they are what they are? Because they have a kid who's making 20% of their revenues because he's telling people to buy their subs on his YouTube channel. And the guy does not play video games professionally. He just does MTV weirdo kid shit. Yep. I mean, just truthfully, right? He's just doing weird things and kids eat it up. So it's a very, very young market, which is why I'm always careful about how we position Las Vegas, because we're a 21 and up market. And I do believe that eventually there'll be this, market that does grow up and really hit our Las Vegas Strip and enjoy all the amenities that we have to offer. But it is not in any way anytime soon. And it is not in the direction of esports first. It's just more this cultural relevance of this new, just online lifestyle that a lot of today's kids are a part of.
And then when you look at, Las Vegas as a destination, so to speak, it's transient, right? I mean, because the Strip, people come in, they leave, they come in, they leave, and you've got the communities around it. And most everyone I know that lives in Las Vegas says, I never go to the Strip, or very rarely will go to the Strip. So if it's transient, how do you capture consistency and continuity in that market?
Again, I'm actually thinking that what you're saying is going to change soon because of the size or the growth of the city as a whole, right? We've had quite a lot of people moving to Las Vegas over the past year. There's clearly a lot of benefits living in Nevada. Our population is increasing significantly, and we are looking for more ways to harness that local community and give them those things. The Strip, is what the Strip is. With 40 million people coming here a year, there's a way to hold again, I said the circus before, hold your entertainment events, hold things that are interesting, conventions, conferences. These are things that work because it's 3 days, 4 days, but just do one esports event. It's just, okay, good luck. Right. But, with the local market, we're large enough now where, there was a time where there were like 3 or 4 LAN centers in Las Vegas, and it really dwindled down to just one. And I'm not talking about the esports arena because that's on the Strip. We're not talking about just like a local community, and that's Press Start Gaming. And those guys have been going at it for years, and their numbers are starting to go up. And so we are seeing that there's a local Las Vegas audience that is growing and developing. Again, not the critical mass that's being advertised, but it's significant growth nonetheless. So I do think that you have opportunities, and I'm saying this because I'm preaching for myself, because I'm going to reintroduce, this insert coin style bar.
We're going to talk about that in a minute.
But it's a cannabis.
I definitely want to get to that. Well, to your point, there are several companies in that localized space. Belong Gaming has, I think, currently 6 or 7 centers. However, a week or two
promised
ago,
500. Promised 500.
Yeah, and then but 2 weeks ago they said we're stopping with the company owned. We're going to go to a franchise model. Sure. Simplicity Esports out of Florida did that, and they acquired a chain, and I don't think that they've moved the needle. I spoke yesterday with the people at Glitch who are building.
Yeah, I heard of them.
36 arenas.
Okay.
With a budget of $1.5 billion.
Okay.
And that was an interesting conversation, to say the least. And they're really, the interesting. They're all really bright people,
Sure.
very experienced in aspects of gaming and certainly land-based entertainment. And they all see differences in why they're going to be successful and or not. But even on a local basis, if you look at basically an exaggerated land center, they're almost the math tutoring centers for gaming.
Right. Yeah.
And and how do you put butts in the seat at 11 in the morning? Right. And if you don't do that. So tell me about the refresh or the rebirth of what you're doing.
The reset. Yeah. So, after my venue closed, I was approached by a gentleman who was working in the regulatory space. And this was in 2015. He was like, look, we're going to legalize cannabis, and there's going to be a time where you can have lounges that allow for cannabis usage. Could you do insert coins with weed? I said, yes, I can. Let's go. And let's do this. But regulatory processes take time. We actually only got the announcement yesterday of the application process starting next month. It is a lottery system. There is no guarantee I'm going to get one of these things, but I've worked on this long enough. Can't stop letting go. And what I'm excited about is when I look at esports, I look at it as an activity that needs to be introduced to new people and learned and appreciated and touch and feel. Versus just seeing somebody doing it on the stream on a stream somewhere. And I bring this up because we are looking at this opportunity to build a venue where you can eat, drink, smoke, your cannabis. This is no different than going to a bar. It's just it's a new what do I like to call it? Social lubricant.
Okay.
And the idea of offering a product that is very Las Vegas high end that goes to $1 billion industry. And I wasn't talking about esports. I was talking about cannabis.
Yeah.
Cannabis is $1 billion industry just in Nevada alone. And when I see that number, I say, okay, great. Let's attract that $1 billion in my state alone audience. Come on in, enjoy the music, the entertainment, and here's a controller. And, just have that as an additional activity and start to slowly grow this audience the way we've done it from the very beginning, which is community growth, grassroots. We're still grass.
Yeah.
We're not these redwood trees that are being, kind of described by way of this industry. It's not there yet. We are still grass. And so I'm going to sell grass. And, we're very excited about the opportunity of it, combining different entertainment with cannabis and gaming and esports. And I'll tell you, I just saw yesterday, OS NYC, again, yesterday at the time of this recording, they're announcing that they had Hassan, Abi, and Valkyrie at their venue. And the numbers were massive in terms of the exposure they got from that. Well, great. We're in Las Vegas. We want to invite those kind of streamers to have fun, have a good time, and show their audience that, there are places to enjoy and be seen. And, it's a social environment. It's a place that's welcoming. And I think those are the things that have been missing in esports for a long time. The lack of inclusiveness, but at the same time, the lack of education and outreach to audiences outside of the hardcore gamer.
Yeah, it certainly has. And I think to a certain extent, the hardcore gamers have not wanted to open the doors to outsiders.
Right.
That they, and I hate the word being authentic because it's overused, but they want that to have a credible experience for gamers. And I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago who's heavily involved in the collegiate sponsorship space for esports. And what shocks me is when talking to her, said, yeah, you got all these brands coming in, and they're going to pay some dollars for sponsorships, but not one of them executes or activates their sponsorship. So, they'll slap an automotive company, right, on a header on tickets and some swag, but they're not doing test drives on site, or they're not doing car washes on site, or whatever they could activate to actually give value. And I think the pandering that corporate America has towards gaming is seen through what I had said earlier, the monetization. But if there's nothing there to monetize quite yet. And hopefully brands or whoever it is that's running the space takes a few steps back, takes a couple deep breaths and go, okay, this is how we go forward. and get integrated in the community. When I hear you talk about your new plans, does that then restrict visitors to being over 18 because it's cannabis?
It's still going to be a 21 and up.
It is 21 and up. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's you can have MedMen put a little kiosk in there, right?
I mean, look, anything's possible. This is the beauty of the situation. But I still go back to when I look at the esports arena on the Strip, for instance, right? We talk about esports. Their biggest event is a Mario Kart event. Why? Because that's what's culturally relevant. That's fine. That's great. I don't have to be an esports venue. I could just provide a PlayStation 5. What do you want to play? Yeah. And, start to really develop those audiences to see that, hey, one day this is something I can gamble on. So I'm excited about just the sky's the limit because we're in Vegas. But we're not going to take ourselves as seriously as so many others, where we have to be this thing, hard-nosed esports. And I think that's what will be our success.
I think so. Well, I appreciate the time. A great conversation. I wish you well. As you get closer to opening, certainly come back. We'll discuss what you're doing and where you're going and give you a forum to do that. The perspective, it's always great to get different perspectives from people on the inside that actually live it and have been successful and unsuccessful. Sure. Almost simultaneously, because that's the journey that we all take. So, Cognizant, Empower Your Performance, absolutely appreciate your time, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is part of the MAP Esports Podcast Network and produced by Innovation Media Enterprises. Please be sure to leave us a review and follow us on your favorite podcast player.